We're going to start this thing in about a second here. We get the video camera rolling, get our recording going on.
Cool. Hi, guys.
All right, got a few more coming in. Kyle, thanks for coming out. I know you're super busy with the team changeover and everything. We totally appreciate it.
Totally. Anything for you guys.
All right, cool. So we got some folks in. Video is rolling. Camera's recording. Let's get busting out here. Thanks for coming out, everybody. Today's the Friday big dog call here at ShoutBoss. We bring on some ShoutBoss users who are really making a dent in the industry. We got Kyle Miller on here. Jim and I have known Kyle for quite a long time. Kyle and I met in Chicago. I think Jim and I all met Kyle in Chicago at Tiger Lead in 2010, where we were there kind of soaking up some knowledge. And Howard, the old owner of Tiger Lead, said, "You got to meet this kid. He's buying up Tiger Lead licenses all over the place. He's not going to stop. He's an internet machine." And sure enough, there he is. We met, we had some drinks, and here we are, like almost 10 years later, on a ShoutBoss call, going over Kyle's numbers. 39 million last year in 2017. Pretty nice, right?
Yeah, 2017 was a pretty good year thus far. That was the highest that we've done. 2017 was also a year of a lot of change that also, kind of transitioned as well into 2018. But yeah, just to kind of go back to Chicago, that was definitely a fun trip. I think you underestimated the amount of drinks we had, but really got started.
Yeah, that was a good time.
But I don't know how you guys even remember. I mean, I remember meeting Kyle. I mean, not exactly, but it's like you guys remember the exact conference in the year.
I remember the table we sat at with G-Funk G.
Oh yeah, I remember it vividly, and I also remember almost missing my flight the next morning.
That was great. That was a good time. So back then, you were solo. You were working in your parents. Your dad and mom were working with you at Keller Williams. You were a solo guy, ready to like take over the internet for leads, and you've gone through a lot of ups and downs team wise, which is what everybody goes through, and we all kind of have the same issue. So, maybe just go in a little bit about kind of like where you started, where you got to, and then we'll dig in a little deeper to some of the details in the team growth.
Yeah, cool. And when you do that, Kyle, maybe you can add why you decided to build a team.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, totally. So back in, when I first started, my parents had a Keller Williams office, and that's kind of how I really got into the sales portion, because I was doing appraising before that. And, that was circa 2009, 2010, and then fully licensed in 2011. And actually, when I met Trevor and you guys, I wasn't actually, one of the first conferences, I was actually only doing some managing of some internet leads that my parents were having or had. And so essentially it was kind of getting a bit of I was getting my feet wet in terms of what was going on, and really what happened was I was managing over these incoming leads that were coming in for my parents' Keller Williams office, and because they were handing them out to realtors. And what happened was the agents weren't calling, and they weren't following up with these leads. And it was one of those situations where I'm like, well, what the hell are you guys doing? And, because these things are expensive. You're talking, even back then it was, $1,000 for a license, for some like leads coming in, upwards of that. And so I just kind of made the decision that, hey, you know what, I can totally do this better. Went and got my license, dropped out of college, and just started to go. And so I was, as you guys said, I, did start off as a solo agent, and, was starting to crush it, was doing a lot of, essentially just working with buyers, and then started to, take over the accounts myself. And I had so many leads coming in that I literally couldn't keep up with it all. So that's when I made the, realize that I needed to hire someone to kind of as another buyer's agent. And that's when I hired Colt, who is actually still on the team. And that was my first hire. So then it kind of grew and, grew organically from there, just out of, what was needed to, grow the team as well as, whatever else. That's kind of how I didn't really set out to, thinking when I got my license, hey, I'm going to have a big team, all that. It just kind of happened organically out of necessity. And, everything happens for a reason.
Hey, Kyle, you said that the agents weren't calling the leads 8 years ago, 9 years ago. Has that changed?
No, it hasn't. I think that it has to a point, that was more of a situation where all the agents that were on it were, independent contractors working on their own, and the brokerage was providing them with leads, right? So they had literally no skin in the game. So they really didn't care whether or not they, called this lead or, didn't call this lead. And, I definitely think, even fast forward to right now, I think that there is definitely a lack of follow-up, and that's one of the biggest, differentiating points between a successful agent and a non-successful agent.
Cool.
So now, back in the day when you were first starting out, getting the team rolling, who you had a CRM? You had Tiger Lead, right?
Yeah.
What else were you using for sort of for any kind of follow-up automation, anything? I mean, remember 5 Street for a little while you had, but
I think 5 Street was was the first one that really came out that was more of like an autoresponder type thing. I mean, we had Tiger Leads, but from like an automatic standpoint, there really wasn't anything back in like 2011, 2012. With exception to I think when Boomtown came out, which I did get. That was really the first one that actually had the ability to have your campaigns and all that stuff set out. I remember back when Tiger Leads first came out, I had to essentially have I had a Word doc of all of the emails and then a time frame on when to actually send those emails out.
It was all manual.
And put that into Gmail. I mean, it was painful.
Yeah, it was all painful. It was manual. It was painful. So that wasn't the growth there was slow. The growth curve was slow. So with something like with the technology that's out there now, what kind of things can you do with a team of? You've got 10 people on your team that you're running, 10 agents, right?
Yeah.
So 10 agents running. There is automation in place. There's CRMs happening. What type of stuff now is making that easier? What's the process that's making that easier for you?
We probably have, our lead gen has definitely has transitioned a lot since, over the years, where it was all about, as many leads as humanly possible coming in, and now it's more transitioned into, focusing on more, Realtor.com, Zillow, more the property specific inquiries. And, but we do have a decent amount coming in every month. And, what you guys have, ShoutBoss, it kind of allows and takes some of the burden off of the immediate follow-up. Now, that does not mean that we don't call as soon as that lead comes through the door. However, it's the next steps that essentially kind of, I view it as more of a, we're trying to not let anything fall through the cracks, or I should say as little fall through the cracks as possible.
Maximize every penny.
Yeah, exactly. And, so what happens, Colt is typically the person who handles all of the inbound leads coming in, just because his phone is literally always attached to his hand. It literally comes in and it's within 30 seconds to a minute, on the phone, if that. And, at least trying to get that initial call in to have a conversation. But then on the back end, you've got ShoutBoss, that's working, sending a text, email, voicemail. I think right now, historically, with all of our leads coming in, I think we're at about like a 50-ish% response rate, coming in. And listen, a decent amount of those are people who say, I'm not really interested or whatever else, right? And
sure.
Then you have to, take it to the next step and, try to convert them.
But you're able to identify those folks up front.
Yep.
Hey, Trevor, what's the benefit now, versus, having a team? I mean, do you make more money, have a better life, do what you want to do? What for you, what's the difference?
For me?
Yeah, what's the benefit of having a team of 10?
It's a loaded question, Jim.
No, I don't know the answer. I'm wondering.
Right, here it is. Last night, I get a text from Kyle at like 8 o'clock at night. I get that email out to you. I'm on the way home from work right now still. So you're rolling in the business is still big. You're not like just kicking back collecting checks.
No, not at all. I mean, so I think that, and again, I got into real estate when I was 21. So I've gone through myself personally from a maturity level. I've gone through a progression and an evolution. I did have a mindset a couple of years ago where it was more sitting back and kind of letting agent do it, but then your business can totally decline if you don't have the right people on the bus, right? When I had that realization on, I really, really love selling real estate. I do. I love the thrill. I love the appointment and all that. And, essentially I've kind of transitioned into more of a, try to lead from the front as, and push everybody and try to get production up as much as humanly possible. And kind of do it that way. I'm not really a big fan of people who kind of are in the back and just are kind of waiting for, agents to kind of bring in their production,
Right.
But that's just me. Everyone is different. I would much rather be, in the trenches with everyone as opposed to, watching from a hill.
Hey, Kyle, so I'm an agent, been in business 2-3 years. I'm doing, 30, 35 deals myself. I'm ready to take it to the next level. What's the next step in building a team? And the second part of that question is, would you follow the millionaire real estate model? Or would you deviate from that? What's your answer?
I mean, if you're doing that, like in hindsight, if I were to go back to, to making that first hire, I totally would have, hired an assistant to kind of take over all of the administrative duties to then just let me have more free time to go out and sell more. Because at the end of the day, that leads to, higher net and higher profits. But I mean, I think that really just depends on what everyone's specific goals are. It's really I really don't think that there is a definitive way that you have to build your team. I used to subscribe to that mindset where, you have to have this model if you want to be successful, first hire an assistant and then a buyer's agent and then another buyer's agent and then a listing partner or whatever, so forth. But I think it really just depends on how you personally want to grow. And also
your biggest learning moments, your biggest part where you things that you really took to the bank after and said, man, I would do this differently, or this was a big mistake and I'm glad I learned from that. What were some of those in the growth process?
Managing people.
It's we hear all the time is people.
Tell me more about that though.
I mean, one of the things that I've realized, or I should say noticed, is when you're managing people, leading people, is you really have to kind of learn the individuals that you are working with, because everybody has different styles of being managed. And I made a mistake early on of trying to manage and do everybody the exact same way. And however, not everybody can respond the same. For example, like Colt first hire, and he and I can have very open, honest conversations. And I can say, hey, you're really screwing up here. And then after that conversation, it's fine after that, right? Whereas if I would have that conversation with someone else, they might actually take that personally and essentially kind of get how do I say this? Feel bad afterwards, all right? Or there might be animosity after it. However, at the end of the day, you kind of have to be able to figure out, okay, what's everybody's individual management styles, and how do they want to be treated?
In order to get the highest productivity out.
How are they also going to respond and then perform?
And that's how you get the highest productivity, by working by knowing their styles.
Yeah, and one thing that we've implemented is individual calls with every single agent every single week. So it's as well as sometimes it varies on the day, but we typically have an entire team Zoom call, online, similar to this. And we kind of go over, review everyone's pipeline, what's, everyone's challenges, what they have coming up, and then kind of going from there. But, to go back to your original question, one of the biggest challenges is just really trying to figure out a way to manage people properly, as well as get people to also do their jobs.
Hey, Kyle, so, in the beginning, I guess when you're doing this, it's exciting and it's easy just to start throwing money out and waiting for it to come back, buying CRM, you're buying leads. I mean, I remember building a team. First thing I thought of is getting, a really good CRM and getting a ton of leads, right? So
Yeah.
how do the metrics play out? Because at some point, we're all doing this to make money, right?
Mm-hmm.
So what can you say on that? How much, do you follow the red book, the percentages of lead cost and splits and so forth?
To an extent, we, in terms of lead, like online lead generation, depending on what source it is, I think, we're converting like Realtor, we're converting Realtor.com probably somewhere between 7 to 12%, depending on the month. We also have not done pay-per-click for a little while. So, our metrics, our lead conversions are a little bit higher, but we're also in a little bit higher of a price point now. So we don't really need to sell as many as when I first got into the business. My average price was 180. And now we're at like somewhere between like 4 to 450 now, being in Center City, Philly.
Nice.
But I would probably say we do try to stay as close to possible to like the red book in terms of profitability. I think right now,
it's baseline for you.
Yeah, I would have to go back. I think we're somewhere around 35% in terms of profit at the end of the day when you take into everything. But also, back, we also had a lot. I mean, Trevor, you know this. At one point, I had like 2 or 3 Tiger Lead accounts with a Boomtown account, and the incoming leads that were coming in on a monthly basis was absolutely unreal, and things were just going through the cracks. And we wasted a lot of money doing that. So we were wasting money in a couple of different ways. We were wasting money on the actual cost of that, and so because why do you need double the amount of lead systems? That doesn't make sense. But
right.
At that time in my career, I was thinking, well, we just need more leads, licenses. And so that was probably about $5,000 to $6,000 a month just for the CRMs and stuff. And then we had so many leads coming in that we were letting things just fall through the cracks. So we were losing money on the licensing fees, plus all of the deals that were then going elsewhere or we couldn't follow up with accordingly.
And pissing off all the people you couldn't get back to fast enough.
Yeah.
Which is money on the drain.
Hey, Kyle, so Layla in the Florida Keys had a question, and actually I think you can answer it really good because if I'm not mistaken, when you first got involved, you kind of partnered up with another agent, right?
Yeah. So in 2007 or last year, about midway through, I think it was May or June of 2017. A really good friend of mine, we actually met through Tiger Leads. It was Tiger Leads, and which is kind of funny how this whole shit works.
Thanks, Howard.
Yeah, seriously. And so we were kind of getting to talking, and he was a team leader of Keller Williams' office at the time. And some things happened behind the scenes between he and the ownership group. And, he also had a mega team. And we were just kind of gotten to talking after we transitioned over to another office. And we're like, why don't we just combine forces? And because we had very similar team structures in terms of the agent count as well as administratively. And we're like, well, why don't we just do this and kind of create like a little bit more of a mega team and kind of put my strengths were one thing and his strengths were something completely different, more so in the recruiting end. And so we were able to kind of, combine forces and essentially kind of, his strengths became my strengths, and we were able to kind of cancel out each other's weaknesses, and been pretty good thus far.
So Kyle, Layla, I think you answered a lot of her questions, but her question is that she's been in business since 1997, doing 15 to 17 million a year. Another agent that's got 8 years experience reached out to her and is looking to partner up. And so the question is, besides what should she look into besides her her character, behavior, and production?
Oh, got it. Okay, I apologize. I just clicked the chat button, so now I see the full question.
No. I wanted to hear that. I think you're a perfect person to answer it, so I'm glad you.
Yeah.
That.
So I mean,
I kind of went through the same thing.
I think that's definitely you do have to be careful in terms of who you go into business with. I personally have known, my business partner, David Wire, for 5-6 years now. And, I've seen him as a manager at the Keller Williams office that we were at. And so I had a little bit more of a personal connection, as well as I've seen him for a long time. So I already had that level of comfortability. Now, I've also seen relationships like that not work. And one of the things that I will say is you definitely need to, I don't know if you guys are familiar with like Keller Williams Recruit Select, but essentially it's, you need to go a couple levels deep in terms of your vetting process. So if you're going to get into business with someone, you should totally be reaching out to other real estate agents that have done co-op deals with to see, okay, how is your experience with that person? Or maybe you already have that experience with that person. And really kind of go through, put them through a vetting process to make sure that like ethically and like they're ethically sound, like they don't have any complaints, and people actually like doing business with them. Because if you go into business with that person's their outward or appearance and their reputation now becomes yours, as well as vice versa. So, it's one of those things where, it also has to make business, also has to make sense financially and all those things up front. So the one thing that you really need to do is, if that partnership is something that you guys want to do, you need to figure out all of the behind the scenes stuff ahead of time. How are you going to be splitting expenses? What's going to be happening when, in terms of like your deals versus their deals? And do you have a team? How are the splits going to be then coming in? And, all of those things. That way you're not going to get blindsided, or, someone else isn't going to feel slighted at one point in the process.
So what are some of the advantages to having a good partner? So say Layla teams up with this person and it's a good thing. What should she be looking for as a metrics to be like, what's a good partnership? What's a good outcome to this?
Well, I think it really depends on what the two people want in terms of growth. David and I partnered up because, he was definitely more adverse at, or he was a recruiter, or, he's very, very good at,
right,
with people, as well as, hiring talented individuals as well. And that was something where I'm not saying, I just really don't like the recruiting process, to be honest with you. I'm more of the.
You like selling houses? I
like selling houses. I like being in the trenches, and I like essentially, being on the management end and productivity. That's what I have really found to be what I like to doing. And one of the unfortunate things about being like an independent contractor as well as real estate agent is all of the jobs essentially of a corporation, like all the different departments and stuff is on you. Like you have to figure that part out, right? And at the end of the day, there's only so many things that we can do, as well as things that are like you only have so many strengths. Like we all can't be good at everything, right? That's why we go and hire people, right? To kind of, to fill in the gaps of what they are good at, and to take your weaknesses off the table. And that was one of the reasons why I got into business with David, because it wasn't really about, it was what are my weaknesses and how can we fill in that gap, as well as vice versa. He was, a recruiter and, manager of that KW office, and he wasn't in the trenches as much as I was for the past, couple of years. So it was, one of those things where we evened each other out, and now we can grow exponentially.
It makes a lot of sense.
As an alternative, I think one of the reasons, I'm just thinking, if I were talking to both these folks, I would wonder why are they both considering it? Is it possible maybe an alternative to just joining up and eliminating any future disputes? Maybe they could just cut some overhead, maybe share a CRM, maybe share an admin. Do you think that would work?
I mean, I think anything can work, but I kind of go back to that original thing I had was it really depends on each other's goals. I think this is one thing where it is okay to be in real estate and to not have a team. It is okay to be a solo agent.
Totally.
And I kind of drives me nuts where having a team is great. You're able to have leverage. You're able to, do a lot of things. But at the end of the day, it really depends. If you don't want to manage people, or you don't want to, you're at a certain level of production and it's consistent and that is good. That is it's all right.
Yeah.
There's this pressure in our industry where essentially everybody, wants and has to have a team. You don't have to have a team.
That's a great point, actually, because you're right about that. People are driving for a team all the time, thinking they need a team. When you can, with an admin, you can really make a bunch of money and be pretty happy.
Some great friends of mine are, have tons of production, and they have themselves, and they have what was it, 3 or 4 assistants that kind of do different things, but that crushes it. And that's okay. You don't have to have.
That's where when I made the most amount of money is when I had a team, but no one was licensed. Assistants and people just do it. If they could do it unlicensed, I'd let them do it.
Yeah. So I really, and to the chat thing. I think the DISC behavioral or the DISC test is important. However, just to that's only a percentage of what the recruiting process is. So just because someone is is high D, or you're high D, and someone else is is something completely different, that honestly you can totally, the recruiting process is also kind of going a couple levels deep and finding out, okay, well, where do you want to go? What's your level of production? And, do you want it to grow? Are you good with being consistent with where you are? And, a lot of it comes down to other personality triggers and stuff. So I don't really go as much into the DISC as much as I used to, because I think there was also a point in my career where, as I was recruiting and hiring agents that are no longer on the team, I was putting too much of an emphasis of trying to find the model of the D to I to S to C, or the, where it's if this person cannot be a good buyer's agent if they do not have this certain profile.
Right. Way too focused on the profile, not focused on the person, like you kind of talked earlier.
And now I'm more in a different mindset if it really comes down to the individual person. And and what their aspirations are, you can look at that, but I don't put as much weight into it anymore.
Awesome. Well, that's a great insight. Because you've grown, you've been from a single agent to a 10-person team, and now with a partner. So you've sort of really gone the full spectrum. You've seen it all, you've tried it all.
Yeah, and now the cool, one thing, with moving over to this new brokerage, which is Compass, we were able to, be part of the launch team for Philadelphia, which shout out Compass Real Estate. Awesome.
Hey, Kyle, why don't you, seriously, you're in the Philly area. If you want to share your phone number, if anybody's got some incoming referrals, that'd be awesome.
Yeah, totally. Yeah, absolutely. But the one thing that I really quick, there's, from coming from a KW background my whole life, and then moving over to Compass, there was always an emphasis of, it was the amount of realtors like on a team or in an office as possible. And, one thing that I have noticed now is it's more about the quality of the agents that are coming in.
Sure.
And just to kind of give you a little bit of a, I'm going to kind of utilize this and want to share this is like, we were vetted coming into a new brokerage, which is completely different than, your other ones like KW office where they'll just essentially hire anybody. Like people were asked like what our reputations are, to the people have good transactions as well as, ethically sound. So, which makes me feel good, but also that should absolutely be, utilized in all of our businesses where, when recruiting team members as well as recruiting, even staff positions where you really have to vet people that you want to be in business with.
That's awesome. And they vetted you, which is great. So obviously they saw the value there, which is awesome. Well, Kyle, we try to keep these calls to a half an hour to save your time and everybody else's. We could go on for hours. You've got a wealth of knowledge. So we're going to have you back, and we're going to dig a little deeper into this team thing here, because I think you've got some aspects that you could really shed light on. Like Layla's pretty happy with some of your information you helped her out with today. So we're glad we could help her. And again, super excited you could come out today. Thank you so much. Really appreciate your time. We know you guys are busy, and everybody else on the call today, thank you so much. You guys are, we appreciate all you guys here. If you have any questions, put them in the post on the Facebook page to this. We'll get some questions to Kyle. If you guys have some further questions, I'm sure he'd be happy to answer a few questions for you. And also don't forget to send out your referrals. Kyle, if you want to toss your number or email or connect in the chat there, we'll send it out.
Scott Ashball?
Yeah, it's Scotty, right? He's been on the call. Yeah, Scott's in here.
I'll post out numbers and everything, and as well as email address. And as always, my phone is always on. If anybody wants to, give me a shout.
Throw that on the post on the Facebook page. That's where we keep a track of this particular call.
Yeah, because I'm always interested in hearing about everyone else's business as well, because there's always, things that people are doing that, I can always learn from as well. So whatever I can do to be as purposeful as well as share the wealth. 100%.
Awesome.
Thank you for your time, Kyle.
Yeah, thanks, Kyle. Appreciate it. All right, guys, have a good one.
Okay, thanks.